When most fighters hit their mid-40s, the conversation is about Hall of Fame inductions, tribute videos, and retirement speeches. With Manny Pacquiao, it's the exact opposite. At 46, instead of winding things down quietly, he's booking another fight. And not just a feel-good appearance in front of a home crowd, but an exhibition in Las Vegas against another former world champion, Ruslan Provodnikov, set for 2026. If you followed Pacquiao over the last few years, you know this hasn't come out of nowhere. The itch to fight again never really left him. Even after his political career in the Philippines took priority and his official boxing resume looked complete, there are always hints that he wasn't done lacing up the gloves. He dipped his toe back in with that exhibition against Japanese kickboxer Rikia Anpo. That was supposed to be a low-risk way to see how his body felt after time away. A 3-round showcase where the expectations weren't sky high. But the result, a draw, didn't exactly light the sport on fire. It wasn't terrible, it wasn't embarrassing, but it also didn't scream, "This man is ready to dominate elite fighters again." A lot of fans walked away from that thinking the legend should probably leave it at that. Pacquiao didn't see it that way. Instead of treating that Ampo exhibition as a closing chapter, he treated it like a warm-up. Before long, he had done something almost nobody expected to see. He landed a shot at a real world title again. Not an exhibition, not a ceremonial event, but a WBC welterweight title fight against Mario Barrios. And he did it at 46 years old. You don't need to be a hardcore boxing fan to understand how wild that is. Barrios is a legitimate, active world champion, a much younger fighter in his prime with size, power, and momentum on his side. On paper, it looked like the perfect passing of the torch setup, a legendary name for Barrios to put on his resume, and a final respectable payday and goodbye for Pacquiao. But that's not how it played out. On fight night in 2025, Manny Pacquiao didn't look like a guy chasing one last check. He looked like someone who still believes, deep down, that he can hang at the top level. He turned back the clock in a way very few aging fighters ever managed to do. Was he the same whirlwind who tore through welterweights a decade ago? No, but he boxed with intelligence, heart, and surprising sharpness, enough to push the younger champion to a majority draw. A majority draw in a world title fight at 46 years old against a reigning champion, after years away from true elite competition. That's insane. And it clearly did something to Pacquiao internally. That performance galvanized him. When a fighter that competitive sees he can still operate at that level, the last thing it makes him want to do is walk away. That brings us to 2026. Manny Pacquiao isn't disappearing back into retirement. Instead, he's heading to Las Vegas for another high-profile outing, this time against Ruslan Provodnikov. The key difference is that this next one is not a sanctioned title bout. It's an exhibition at welterweight, a chance to stay sharp and stay active without the pressure of belts and rankings attached to it. The choice of opponent is interesting and, in a way, fitting. Ruslan Provodnikov isn't just some random name thrown in for nostalgia. He's a former world champion in his own right, a man who built a reputation as one of the toughest, most relentless fighters of his era. He walked away from professional boxing back in 2016 with a 2-5-5 record. And the highlight of his career was a brutal, memorable win over Mike Alvarado that earned him the WBO light welterweight title. That fight and others around that time turned him into a cult favorite for fans who love all action, pressure fighters. Like Pacquiao, Provodnikov stepped into the political world after hanging up the gloves, shifting his focus from the ring to public life. Also like Pacquiao, the idea of a return to boxing never completely left the conversation. He's now 42, and over the past few years there have been occasional murmurs that he might consider getting back in there under the right circumstances. Now we have it. Pacquiao versus Provodnikov, set for Las Vegas at the Thomas and Mack Center, home of the UNLV-running Rebels basketball program. The date being targeted is April 18th, 2026. The Thomas and Mack isn't some tiny venue. It's a real arena, a building that has seen big events and loud crowds. Putting this fight there, in a city that's synonymous with boxing, tells you exactly what this is meant to be, a serious exhibition. It might not go on anyone's official record, but it's clearly being treated like a major attraction. Pacquiao would almost certainly have preferred another fully sanctioned, title-level fight after what he did against Mario Barrios. When you go 12 rounds with a reigning champion and walk away with a majority draw, you've proven you're not just a nostalgia act. You're still competitive. But boxing is a business. Matchmaking is political, and opportunities don't always line up as cleanly as a fighter's ambitions. So this exhibition with Provodnikov becomes a bridge. It keeps Pacquiao in fighting shape. It keeps his timing, reflexes, and instincts active. And just as important, it keeps his name circulating, his brand strong, and his connection with fans alive while he eyes something bigger toward the end of the year. And let's be honest, from a fan perspective, Pacquiao versus Provodnikov is not a bad way to pass the time. Stylistically, even at their advanced ages, this matchup has a potential to entertain. Pacquiao, even as an older fighter, still relies on angles versus speed and that trademark in-and-out movement. Provodnikov, at his best, was a come-forward tank, a man who took a shot to land a shot, who never stopped walking you down, who turned fights into test of will as much as skill. Of course, this is an exhibition, which means you're not supposed to expect a bloodbath. But exhibition means different things with different fighters. With Manny Pacquiao and Ruslan Provodnikov, you're talking about two men whose entire careers were built on pride and aggression. Neither of them really knows how to go half speed once the bell rings, even if their stated intention is to put on a show more than to hurt each other. There's also an interesting symmetry in the fact that both men moved into politics. Pacquiao went from boxing icon to senator and presidential candidate in the Philippines. Provodnikov took on a public role in Russia. They both lived parallel second lives away from the sport that made them famous, and now in their 40s, they're both stepping back into the ring under the same conditions. Older, accomplished, and with nothing left to prove in terms of legacy. That changes the stakes. For Pacquiao, this isn't about building a resume. That part is finished. 8th Division World Champion. Multiple Fighter of the Year awards. Victories over a long list of Hall of Famers and former champions. Even at 46, nothing that happens against Provodnikov is going to knock him off the pedestal he already occupies in boxing history. For Provodnikov, it's the same. His legacy lives in those wars at 140 pounds, that Mike Alvarado fight, the nights where he forced opponents into the kind of battles most fighters dread. Whether this exhibition ends in a fast-paced or more measured sparring-type session, it won't overwrite what he did in his heyday. So what is it about, really? At its core, it feels like an outlet for two lifers who still love the craft. Pacquiao especially has made it clear, through his actions if not through elaborate statements, that he doesn't want to leave the sport with question marks in his own head. That majority draw with Mario Barrios didn't close the book for him. It ripped out the page that said the end and added a few more blank ones. Taking on an exhibition like this gives him a controlled way to stay active. There are no official rankings on the line. Commissions tend to treat these differently from full-on sanctioned events. The risk is lower, at least in theory, while still giving him the chance to keep his body in that constant state of readiness in case the right official fight comes along later in the year. And make no mistake, that's the undercurrent here. The idea of a potentially bigger fight at the end of this year is not accidental wording. Pacquiao and his team are clearly viewing this as a step, not a destination. If he looks sharp, healthy, and marketable in April, it becomes that much easier to sell broadcasters, promoters, and opponents on one more real run, or at least one big-name send-off. From a standpoint of Filipino fans, this is another bonus chapter in a career that already feels almost mythical. Pacquiao has carried the flag for Philippines on the world stage for 2 decades. Every time he fights, especially in a place like Las Vegas, it turns into a national moment. Flags everywhere, watch parties, that familiar wave of pride. An exhibition doesn't change that emotional reaction. In some ways, it might heighten it, because fans know we're closer to the final bell of his career than the beginning. There's also something undeniably appealing about seeing him in Las Vegas again, not as a ceremonial guest or VIP, but as an active participant